Imagine going to college, and on day one, you're told that if you don't make it across a narrow stone bridge without falling, you die. Not you fail the class, not you get held back a year, you die. And that's the easy part, because after that, you have to survive a war college where the professors don't just allow students to kill each other, they expect it. Where your own classmates are your biggest threat. And where, if you do somehow make it through all of that, your reward is walking into a field full of massive, fire-breathing dragons and hoping one of them decides you're worth keeping alive. This is the world of Fourth Wing, the book that broke sales records, sold millions of copies in its first week alone, and turned an entire generation of readers into people who stay up until 3 a.m. whispering just one more chapter. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly why. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, this is where we take the biggest, most talked about books and break them down. The full story, the twists, the characters you'll fall in love with, and the moments that made readers online lose it. Today, we're diving into Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, book 1 in the Empyrean series, and one of the biggest publishing phenomena in the last 2 decades. This isn't hyperbole. This series has sold well over 10 million copies in the US alone, and its most recent installment became one of the fastest-selling adult novels in 20 years. So today, I'm going to walk you through the entire story of Fourth Wing, where it starts, how the world works, who you need to know, and everything that happens right up to that gut punch of an ending. Quick heads up, this is a full story summary, so there will be spoilers. If you want to go in completely blind, pause here, go read it, and come back. Otherwise, let's get into it. And hey, before we jump in, if you're the kind of reader who wants the full picture before committing to a 500-page book, hit that subscribe button now, because we're covering the rest of this series, plus dozens of other viral reads right here on this channel. Let's start with the world. The story takes place in the Kingdom of Navarre, a nation that has survived for centuries because of one thing: dragons. Dragon riders are the backbone of Navarre's military, the only real defense against enemy nations, and more importantly, against something far more dangerous lurking beyond the kingdom's borders, something the government has spent years trying to keep quiet. To become a rider, you have to survive Basgiath War College, and survive is not a figure of speech. Every year, cadets are funneled into different quadrants based on their skills: infantry, healers, scribes, and the most elite and most deadly of them all, the riders quadrant. Our main character is Violet Sorengale. Violet was raised expecting to become a scribe, a quieter, safer path suited to someone with a connective tissue disorder that makes her bones fragile and her joints prone to dislocating. She spent her whole life around books, history, and knowledge, not swords and combat. But everything changes the moment her mother, General Sorengale, one of the most powerful and feared commanding officers at Basgiath, makes a decision that flips Violet's entire future upside down. Instead of allowing Violet to walk the safe path, her mother forces her into the rider's quadrant. Why would a mother do that to a daughter with a body that could shatter under the wrong kind of impact? That question sits underneath the entire first act, and it's one of the reasons this book grabs you immediately, because Violet isn't just fighting monsters and rival cadets. She's fighting a system that was never built for someone like her, and a mother whose motives she doesn't fully understand. On her very first day, Violet has to cross the parapet, a treacherous, narrow bridge over a deadly ravine. Cadets fall, cadets die. It's not an accident built into the system. It's the system. Basgiath's philosophy is brutally simple. If you can't survive training, you would have died on the battlefield anyway, so better to find out now. Violet survives the parapet, but only barely, and only with help, including from Dain, a childhood friend and the son of another respected military family, who has clearly appointed himself her protector. Dain represents safety. He's kind, he's loyal, and he desperately wants to keep Violet alive, even if that means holding her back. But then there's the other name everyone in this world says with a mix of fear and venom: Xaden Rierson. Quick pause here, because I want you to sit with this next part, because it's the hinge the entire plot swings on. Xaden Rierson is the son of a former rebel general, a man who was executed years earlier for leading an uprising against the crown. That execution order signed by Violet's own mother, which means, in the eyes of Basgiath's unwritten rules, Xaden and the other marked ones, children of executed traitors who were still allowed to train as riders, have every reason in the world to want Violet Sorrengail dead. Rumors swirl that there's a quiet, unofficial vow among them to make sure she never survives to graduate. So from nearly the first page, Violet is caught between two forces: a war college actively trying to kill her through attrition, and a specific, dangerous, magnetic young man who may be one of the people most likely to finish the job. You can probably already feel where this is going, and yes, this is where the enemies to lovers tension that made this book explode on social media really begins to take root. But Yarros doesn't rush it. The tension between Violet and Xaden builds through stolen glances, sharp verbal sparring, moments where he could hurt her and doesn't, and a slow, grudging respect that neither of them wants to admit to. Meanwhile, the actual stakes of the world are escalating. Cadets keep dying, some from training, some from accidents that don't feel accidental at all. Violet has to physically and mentally prove she belongs in a place built for people twice her strength, and she does it through cleverness, knowledge, and sheer stubbornness, rather than brute force. Then comes threshing. The day cadets who've survived training long enough finally stand in a field and wait to see if a dragon will choose to bond with them. This is not guaranteed. Dragons are ancient, sentient, prideful, and they don't bond with just anyone. Cadets who go unchosen are killed on the spot by the dragons present, because in this world, an unbonded cadet is considered a liability, not a person who just didn't get picked. Given Violet's small size and physical limitations, almost nobody expects her to survive threshing, but she does, and not in the way anyone predicted. She bonds with Dain, one of the oldest, most powerful, and most feared dragons at Basgiath. Dain is not warm. He's blunt, arrogant, and openly annoyed at having chosen a physically fragile human, but underneath that gruffness is a fierce, immovable loyalty once the bond is formed. And as if that weren't wild enough, Violet later also bonds with a second dragon, a young, unusual, golden red dragon named Anderna, something almost unheard of in this world. Two dragons, one rider. It marks Violet as different in a way that makes her both more powerful and a much bigger target. If you're new here, this is exactly the kind of story we love breaking down on this channel. Drop a comment telling me which dragon you'd want to bond with, Dain or Anderna, and let's see which one wins in the comments. Now, back to the story, because this is where things get dangerous. With Dain bonded to her, Violet officially becomes a rider cadet. But bonding with a dragon doesn't make Basgiath any safer. If anything, it raises the stakes. She now has to prove herself in actual combat training, learn to wield a growing, unfamiliar kind of power, and continue surviving a school that seems to be actively working against her. And here's where the plot thickens in a way that had readers everywhere, flipping pages faster and faster. Xaden Riorson is assigned as her mentor. The person most rumored to want her dead is now, by rule of the War College, responsible for training her and keeping her alive. Neither of them chose this. Both of them resent it, at least at first. But forced proximity has a way of cracking open walls that neither character wants cracked. Xaden sees Violet's intelligence, her refusal to quit, even when her body is breaking down, her sharp, tactical mind. Violet sees glimpses of Xaden that contradict everything she's been told, moments of restraint, of protectiveness, of a man carrying way more weight and secrets than anyone around him realizes. Throughout this stretch of the book, cadets keep dying, some in training exercises, some in ways that are clearly murder disguised as accidents. Violet begins piecing together that something bigger is happening beneath the surface of Basgiath. There are secrets the leadership is hiding. There's tension about the war against Navarre's enemies that doesn't quite add up. And there are hints, quiet, unsettling hints, that the threat beyond the kingdom's protective wards is far worse than cadets have been told. Violet's chemistry with Xaden becomes impossible to ignore. Their training sessions turn into something more charged. He starts protecting her in ways that go beyond his assigned duty, showing up when she's in danger, giving her information that could get him in serious trouble, pushing her to grow stronger longer, not because he's ordered to, but because he doesn't want to watch her die. And Violet, in turn, starts trusting him with pieces of herself she hasn't given anyone, including the reality of her physical condition, something she's spent her whole life hiding out, of fear it would be used against her. Their relationship deepens from tension into something undeniably romantic. Slow burn, high stakes. We shouldn't want each other, but we do. Energy that readers online could not stop talking about. But it's never simple. Every step closer to Xaden is a step further into danger, because his loyalties, his past, and his family's rebellion are far from resolved. And Violet's own family, her mother's rank, her sister Mira's protectiveness, her complicated history with Dain, keeps pulling her in different directions. Dain, for his part, doesn't fade quietly into the background. He's still watching, still convinced he's the one who should be protecting Violet. And there's a real, lingering tenderness between them. Dain represents the life Violet was supposed to have. Safe, predictable, sanctioned by everyone around her. Xaden represents the opposite. Danger, uncertainty, a version of herself she didn't know existed until Basgiath forced it out of her. That contrast is part of what makes the middle of this book so addictive. Underneath it all, unease about the border keeps growing. Cadets whisper about patrols that don't come back the way they should. Officers change the subject a little too fast when the wards come up. Violet, ever the former scribe at heart, can't let a mystery sit unexamined, and her instinct to dig for answers becomes just as dangerous as anything happening on the training mat, okay? If you've made it this far, you already know. This book does not let up, but we're about to hit the part of the story that readers everywhere say wrecked them. So if you've been enjoying this breakdown, now's the perfect time to hit like it genuinely helps this video reach more readers like you. Let's keep going. As the story pushes toward its climax, the danger stops being abstract. The people around Violet start paying the price for the world she's living in. She loses someone close to her, a fellow cadet she's grown to care deeply about, in a moment that lands like a gut punch, precisely because Yarros spends so much of the book making you love these characters before ripping them away. It's a brutal reminder of the book's central rule. At Basgiath, nobody is safe, no matter how much you've grown to care about them. At the same time, the political and supernatural threat that's been simmering under the surface finally breaks through. The wards protecting Navarre, the very thing keeping the kingdom safe from the monstrous, almost unstoppable enemy beyond its borders, are not as strong as everyone has been told. Violet begins to realize that the people in charge, including figures she's trusted her whole life, have been lying. Not small lies. The kind of lies that get soldiers killed and keep an entire kingdom in the dark about a war they might already be losing. And Xaden's secrets finally start to surface too. His connection to his father's rebellion is deeper and more complicated than son of a traitor. He possesses a rare, dangerous kind of power tied to his bloodline, the kind of power that, if discovered, could get him executed the same way his father was. Violet is forced to reckon with the fact that the man she's fallen for has been lying to her about pieces of who he is, not out of cruelty, but survival. And she has to decide whether that changes anything about how she feels. This is the emotional peak of the book. Violet, caught between the family, an institution that raised her, and a truth that threatens to burn all of it down. She has knowledge now that could get her killed if it reaches the wrong people. Knowledge about the wards, about the real threat facing Navarre, about how much has been hidden from cadets who are being sent to die defending lies. We're heading into the final stretch now, the part of the book that basically broke the internet when it came out. If you want more breakdowns like this the moment they drop, make sure you're subscribed, because we've got the rest of this series coming, and trust me, it does not slow down from here. Everything comes crashing together in the book's final act. The threat from beyond the wards becomes undeniable and immediate. Not a rumor anymore, but a direct, violent confrontation that forces Violet, Xaden, Tairn, and Darna, and the rest of Basgiath's cadets into real combat against an enemy far more powerful than anything they trained for. The line between training exercise and actual war disappears completely. Violet has to use everything she's learned, her intelligence, her growing bond with two dragons, her physical limitations that she's learned to fight around rather than be defined by, to survive what should, by every measure, be unsurvivable. And she does it not by becoming someone else, but by staying exactly who she is. Resourceful, stubborn, and willing to do what the stronger cadets around her can't. The battle also forces the truth about the kingdom's leadership out into the open. The lies about the wards, about the real nature of the enemy, about how much danger Navarre is actually in. All of it becomes impossible to hide any longer. Violet is left holding information that could shift the entire war, and a relationship with Xaden that has gone from forbidden to essential, forged in the kind of fire that either destroys people or bonds them for life. And then, because this book absolutely does not believe in soft landings, it ends on a gut punch of a note. Trust is tested. Secrets are only half resolved, and the peace Violet fights so hard for is immediately threatened by a new revelation that changes how she sees the people closest to her. Readers everywhere close this book with their jaws on the floor, immediately needing to know what happens next, which is exactly why the sequel, Iron Flame, became one of the most anticipated releases in recent publishing history, and why the third book, Onyx Storm, went on to become the fastest-selling adult novel in 20 years. So that's the full story of Fourth Wing, a war college that kills its own students, a writer who was never supposed to survive it, a dragon bond nobody predicted, and a romance built on the most dangerous kind of trust. It's easy to see why this book became the phenomenon it did. High stakes, morally complicated characters, a slow burn romance that actually earns its payoff, and a world with just enough mystery left unanswered to make you desperate for the next book. If you loved this breakdown, let me know in the comments. Team Xaden or Team Dain? And if you're new here, subscribe. Because next up, we're breaking down Iron Flame. And trust me, it goes even further than this one did. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.